Alrighty boys, welcome back once again to another video. How you guys doing? Guys, today we're going to be talking about the newest bow and arrow to find its way into Fortnite Save the World, which is known as the Love Song Bow. Now I know what you guys are thinking, it's another bow and arrow, and every single time we get a bow and arrow, it's like Epic Games doesn't really know how to necessarily bow and arrow. This time around though, this bow is actually pretty decent at launch. I feel as though they kind of learned from their mistakes with the previous ones, and then now that they buffed them, they're kind of like, okay, it's kind of clicking in their head that they know how to release a bow now. So we're going to be talking about Love Song in today's video. I did tons of testing, way more than I normally do for any of my normal weapon reviews. So sit back, relax, and get ready. It's going to possibly be a long one. Before we do jump into it, quick shout out to Ricardo for using the G Fuel code at gfuel.com. I appreciate your face, man. Thank you for supporting the channel. But without further ado, let's go and talk about the Love Song bow, and let's exactly see why it's a pretty decent one overall. Okay, so now that the intro bit is out of the way, let's go and talk about the Love Song bow, how you are going to go about unlocking it, how you might want to roll the weapon, all of the testing that I've done, what kind of damage you can hit with this thing, the hero loadout, everything like that. We got a lot to go over in today's video. Like I said, strap in. So, the first thing I want to go over is how exactly you get this weapon. You can pick up the Love Song bow from the event store, meaning that this bow will be in the shop from now until April the 3rd, according to at least Fortnite.com, which will be the end of the season. You'll be able to get this thing all the way up until April the 3rd for 1680 gold, and yeah, just go to the event shop and buy it. The event shop is actually on a rotation of resetting at 7 p.m. Eastern time on a Friday. Not sure if it's exactly weekly or if it's just whenever they add new stuff to it, but we did do a stream on twitch.tv where we waited for the shop reset because we knew about it in the on the website or whatever. So definitely do keep an eye out for the event store if you're like playing around 7 p.m. Eastern on a Friday, because it might actually refresh just in case you didn't know that that was already a thing. Now, once you pick this weapon up, what exact perks do you really want to put on it? For me personally, I went with, of course, the standard crit build, seeing as that will net us the most damage. I got a double crit damage, crit rating, energy, which you can do any element if you want, as well as damage to stun, staggered, frozen, or knockdown targets. I'll elaborate a little bit on that in a minute. Now, the unique perk with this bow is very, very, very effective. It says keeping the bow drawn past max charge will fire an arrow that stuns the enemy for 10 seconds. The way that this works is that you pull back the bow and you'll see like a little pink dot on the end. You'll see it start to glow, and then whenever it kind of like pings, that's whenever you know that you have this effect on your arrow. It goes on to say that weapon damage will break this effect. And then lastly says it does not affect bosses or enemies that have recently been love struck. Now there's a little bit of a grammar thing here that we're not entirely sure what's going on. There's two different ways to interpret this. Does not affect bosses or enemies that have recently been love struck, or does not affect bosses or enemies that have recently been love struck. So there's a different way to interpret it. Whether it's supposed to affect mini bosses or not is really in question, because it absolutely does. Here's some gameplay of me doing it to the MSK Smasher, so the Mythic Storm King Smasher, the pretty much best way to really get around a mini boss in my opinion, and a high level one at that. As long as the Smasher is not roaring or charging at you, you are able to stun it, which yes, that does mean that you are unable to stun a rushing Smasher. You're also unable to stun a rushing Taker, so do keep that in mind. If you are getting rushed out or charged at, you cannot stun them, but if they are walking around, they're not roaring or anything like that, you will be able to stun them. You will be able to do this to both mini bosses and every single other husk in the game, aside from the Mythic Storm King. So there is a little bit of a weird thing here with that perk. We're not sure if this is intentional. The Blizzard Blitzer in the past was nerfed, and it basically made it to where it couldn't freeze mini bosses. However, that might be a different case because the Blizzard Blitzer, when damaging the mini boss, didn't take away the freeze effect. So perhaps the Love Song is going to stay this way because you can't infinitely have them stunned, you know, because if you end up damaging them with a weapon, then they'll end up getting unstunned. However, this does not apply to traps and abilities, as well as, you know, here's some gameplay to kind of prove that. Here's some gameplay of me freezing a Smasher and then trying to use my minigun on him after the fact, and the minigun will not take the Smasher out of the Love Struck trance. So you are able to actually stun a mini boss or a Smasher or anything like that and use your abilities, even miniguns, you know, even lefty and righty and all that kind of stuff. And then here is another clip of me stunning a Smasher in the middle of a trap tunnel, and you will see that the actual gas traps and everything else that's damaging him does not take him out of the stun effect because it is not a ranged weapon. So yeah, the main thing about the Love Song is that if this is intentional, this bow bow is absolutely ridiculous. You are able to stun mini bosses in its current effect or in its current state. We'll have to get an update from Epic Games on whether or not this is intentional, but for right now, I'm just going to act as if it is so. Now, going back to that last perk which says damage to stun, staggered, frozen, or knock down targets, there's two ways you can do this. You can either run with that perk because you can, shoot them a second time and get that bonus damage, or you can put damage to miss monsters and bosses, which could possibly be a little bit more consistent for you. Either or really doesn't matter. I just went with damage to stun, seeing as I'm going to be stunning a lot of stuff anyways, and that'll also allow me to get extra damage on the mini bosses and smashers that I'm shooting at. I also ended up doing some testing with this to see if whenever you love struck a propane, does it drop the propane, and it indeed does not. In fact, for me, the propane actually caught fire and then later exploded. So if you do think of this as a way of, getting around propane husks, it will not work. It will either ignite it or it will allow the propane husk to still hold on to that propane tank. I believe that does it pretty much for all of my testing. There is two other facts that I can give you about this bow, and that is that in a full party, you will be hitting around over 2 million damage whenever you actually do get a crit, as well as the cooldown between your love struck whenever you hit an enemy and they, go around and they're stunned. The next time that you can do it again is a 5 to 6 second cooldown. I saw that Isherwood was testing it, and he came up with around 5 seconds, maybe a little bit more. Then you will be able to shoot them again and then get them in the love struck trance. Now, aside from that, we can go ahead and move on to the hero loadout that I ended up using in the gameplay, as probably should have mentioned that earlier before going on a whole tangent, but if you guys are curious, it's pretty much the exact same loadout from yesterday's video. Stoneheart Farah is an absolute insane hero, definitely a meta one, and she's really good with this bow. No, the effect does not work whenever you are using Farah. If you shoot the base enemy and the damage that goes out and splints into other enemies, that will not stun them just like any of the other bows, so you will not see an effect there. Of course, totally rocking out Battle Beat, Subwoofers, everything in between. That is the hero loadout. Aside from that, I guess we can talk about a little bit of a comparison here, because I do want to mention something. Whenever you are not using Farah, this bow may be a little bit of a pain for you to use. Here is a comparison between the Love Song and the Vendortech Seeker. You obviously see that the Seeker has way more damage, way more headshot damage, way better crit hit chance, and actually more impact, which is a little bit surprising. Now, the Love Song has better impact than the Boom Bow. I figured it would have the most impact, but it does not. The reason that the Love Song can become a little bit annoying if you're not using Farah, at least in base game missions, is that you're not going to have that AoE effect that you like with all the other bows. Vendortech Seeker, be able to hit 3 enemies at a time, maybe more. I don't know if it pierces. The Compression Burster, you'll be able to shoot at the ground, hit multiple enemies. If you use the, Vacuum Tube, you're going to be able to hit like 20 enemies at one time. The Love Song, and I believe the Night Owl somewhat has AoE, but the Love Song isn't going to have AoE unless using Farah. Now, that's not to say that without Farah, this bow is useless, because the main use you're really going to have for this bow is using it in something like Endurance. Being able to shoot a smasher, keeping them stunned in your trap tunnel, and allow them to take more and more damage over time, especially with the stuff like mini bosses and keeping them stuck, is going to be absolutely crucial. I know a lot of Endurance players try to push mini bosses off the edge and have them die in lava, and this will be the perfect bow to do it. Pull it back, stun the mini boss, and then charge them off the edge. Again, if the mini boss thing isn't intentional, then that's going to take away a lot of the usability from this bow in my opinion, but you'll still be able to use it on the likes of smashers. This bow isn't exactly the best bow in the world to use in the base game missions, but especially for Endurance, you're going to find a lot of use with it. If you are going to use it in the base game missions, I highly suggest Farah, as she does give it an AoE effect, which it doesn't have otherwise, and makes it very usable. And I honestly never felt like I was at a disadvantage when using this bow in an actual public mission, because I was getting that AoE on top of the stun on almost every single shot for the higher health enemies, and it felt really good to be able to control the tide of battle like that. The only downside you'll find is that maybe your teammates will take those smashers and those mini bosses outside of their stun by shooting them with a ranged weapon, but aside from that, it's a pretty good bow overall, and that's really the only downside I can think of. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments down below. I hope that this video did help you find out as much as you needed to know about the Love Song bow. I tried to do as many tests as possible. I might have missed one crucial detail here or there. If you guys have picked up any sort of information about this bow that I didn't mention, feel free to throw it in the comments down below. But guys, that's it for the Love Song review. Just tried to let you guys know as quickly as possible, because we had a lot to go over in today's video, but I hope you guys enjoyed nonetheless. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time. By the way, I ranked this bow like a 7.5 or an 8, something like that. yeah, I really like it. See you guys next time.